This is it, the last episode of More Than Fun and Games. I'm gonna need a tiny not safe for work stamp, I think. It's like not the big one. It's not safe for work enough. Is that a thing? Anyway, a tiny not safe for work stamp. Let's go. Welcome to the Lesbian Romantic podcast. This is More Than Fun and Games, Part 10, The Plan. Leah hoped she'd never get used to the wave of feelings that always washed over her when Emily kissed her. Her lips were tingling and her skin was glowing wherever Emily touched her. She pressed closer to Emily, deepening their kiss. Groaning, Emily laid her hands on Leah's behind. Leah's blood thrummed in her veins as she slipped a hand under Emily's shirt. After this morning's conversation, Leah desperately wanted to be as close to Emily as she could be. Her thumb bumped against Emily's bra wire. Emily caught Leah's lip between her teeth and moaned softly. Leah smiled knowingly, moving her hand further up until her fingers found a hard nipple under the cotton. "Oh, we shouldn't," Emily gasped, just as Leah cupped her breast. "But I really want to," Leah replied. Emily dug her nails into the fabric of Leah's jeans. "There are probably cameras here," she whispered in Leah's ear. Leah groaned softly as Emily's thigh pressed against her center. But then, the sudden, strong vibration in her front pocket startled them both. "What the?" Leah gasped, stepping back. Emily burst out into a throaty laugh. "Brought some toys, baby?" Confused, Leah patted her pockets. "Fuck, it's my phone," she sighed, pulling it out. "I figured as much," Emily said, letting herself fall back against the elevator wall. Leah frowned at the screen. "Oh, it's a message from Claire." "What does it say?" Emily asked, wiping some hair out of her eyes. Leah's throat tightened as she read the note from Claire. "She says I was right. She apologizes." "Oh," Emily smiled. "That's..." A loud ding interrupted her, startling them both again. The elevator doors slid open. Leah quickly took another step back. She bumped into the carry-on suitcase behind her, and it nearly toppled over. "Careful," a deep voice said from outside the elevator. Both Emily and Leah's heads snapped to the right. A beautiful, middle-aged woman was standing in the hotel lobby, grinning at them. She slowly reached for the button that kept the elevator doors open. "Hello, Emily. I was hoping to catch you before you left," she said, her eyes sparkling. Leah's mind quickly put two and two together. She wasn't surprised when Emily croaked, "Aisha, good morning." Jahani's dark brown eyes settled on Leah now. Leah waved shyly. "Hi, I'm Leah." "Leah's my girlfriend," Emily added, clearing her throat. "Yes, I can see that," Jahani said smoothly, her face lighting up with amusement. "What a surprise," Emily said, straightening her shirt as she stepped out of the elevator. Leah quickly got out too, dragging their two carry-ons behind her. Her cheeks were burning. "You did mark your early morning email as urgent," Jahani told Emily. Leah's ears perked up. Emily had sent Jahani an email? She hadn't mentioned it to Leah yet. Emily smiled shyly. "I guess I did. I just didn't expect you to respond to it so soon." Putting a hand on her side, Jahani said, "I take pride in knowing what my priorities are first thing in the morning." Emily's eyes flicked to Leah, and Leah widened hers in response. She had no idea what was going on here. Their short interaction didn't go unnoticed, and Jahani turned around. "I'm sorry, Leah," she said. "I didn't mean to be rude and interrupt your morning." Still blushing, Leah stuttered, No, you weren't interrupting anything." Jahani smiled knowingly. "Okay, can I buy you some coffee?" Leah blinked. She wasn't sure the question was addressed to her. Her eyes flicked to the left, then right, but Jahani's gaze remained fixed on her. "Yes, I think we have some time, Leah finally squeaked, wishing Emily would take over. Great, Johnny beamed. There's a coffee place over there. She pointed at a corner of the hotel lobby. Emily finally spoke up. Okay, that should work. We have some time left before we need to get to the airport. Follow me, Johnny said. She winked at Leah before spinning on her heel and heading in the direction of the coffee place. Leah mouthed, "What the fuck?" at Emily, who raised her hands in apology and whispered back, "I don't know." Emily grabbed her suitcase, gave Leah another apologetic look, and then hurried after Johnny. Leah, shaking her head, pulled the other suitcase behind her. While crossing the lobby, she studied Ayesha Johanny. Leah had seen pictures and videos of Johanny, of course. She had spent quite some time Googling her whenever Emily wasn't around in the last few days. She had to admit that Johanny looked even more classy, kind, and intelligent in real life. She didn't feel as jealous anymore, though. Not even now, when she saw the full effect Johanny had on Emily. Despite the embarrassing situation, Emily had brightened when she saw Johanny. And apparently she had emailed Johanny in the middle of the night. Leah had no idea what that was about, but she trusted Emily. This morning's conversation had reminded her of Emily's loyalty and commitment. Still, Leah felt a pang of worry. It was clear that Emily would have really liked to take this job if it was closer to home. Leah didn't want this to be even more difficult for Emily. Here we go. Johnny smiled at Emily, already seated. Emily placed the carry-on next to the small table. She grabbed a chair and sat down, looking up expectantly at Leah. Leah said hesitantly. I can wait at another table if you two need to talk business. Emily opened her mouth, but Johanny spoke first. Oh no, please, Leah, join us. Patting the chair next to her, Emily nodded excitedly. Okay then, Leah said in a high pitch. Her heartbeat picked up as she wondered again what the hell was going on. A waitress hurried over to their table, smiling broadly. Ayesha, back already? Leah quirked an eyebrow. Did everyone around here address Johanny with her first name? Or did the young lady working here happen to know Johanny personally in some way? Either way, she liked that Johanny was so informal. Yes, it turns out I need another one of your delicious cappuccinos this morning. Johanny grinned. 2 wasn't enough. The girl chuckled, tucked some of her dark brown hair behind her ear, and turned to Leah and Emily. What would you like on this fine morning? Leah smiled back, liking this woman instantly. Do you have chai latte? Hell yes, the employee grinned. Soy, oat, or dairy milk? Whatever you think is best, Leah said happily, increasingly at ease. Espresso for me, please, Emily said. Single or double? Emily pursed her lips. Triple? They all laughed.
I can do that.
Leah leaned back in her chair and studied Emily's face. Despite the dark circles under her eyes, Emily looked well. The tension in her expression was gone, as if a weight had lifted from her shoulders overnight. So, Ayesha said after the waitress had left. About your email, Emily. Emily crossed her legs and smiled at Johanny, waiting. At first glance, she looked confident enough, but Leah knew better and almost smiled. She had become a bit of an expert on Emily's body language. Crossing her legs? A huge sign that she was unsure about something. I was impressed by your proposal and plan, Johanny continued. Leah's eyebrows shot up. What proposal? What plan? She quickly forced a smile when Johanny's eyes settled on her instead of Emily. I had limited time to work on it last night, Emily said, but I wanted to share my vision on how we could be working together. Something started to tingle in Leah's chest. Her body understood what was going on before her mind was able to grasp it all. Most of the numbers I gave you are estimates, of course, Emily continued, but I think they illustrate the vision behind what my approach would be. They did, Johanny nodded, very convincingly. Emily's face lit up. The feeling in Leah's chest grew more intense until it made her feel giddy. You found a way, didn't you? She thought, excitement and pride flooding over her. So you're willing to consider my approach? Emily pressed, placing both her feet back on the ground. Leah's eyes snapped to Johnny, but Aisha turned toward the waitress, who was back with their order. "Here you go," the waitress said, placing the 3 cups on the table. "Anything else for you ladies?" "This is perfect for now, thank you," Aisha said smoothly. "Put it on my tab, will you?" The girl nodded and looked at Emily and Leah expectantly. "I'm good," Emily said, raising her hands. "Thank you." Leah tucked some hair behind her ear. "Me too, thanks." "All right, call me if you need anything else later," the girl said and left them. Johnny sipped her cappuccino in silence. Leah picked up her chai latte and noticed that her hand was a little unsteady. She was nervous and eager to find out what Johnny thought, even though she still didn't understand fully what was going on. "I think you should indeed create a modular console within 3 years," Johnny finally said, holding her cup of coffee in midair. "You're right to involve the whole R&D team earlier in the process." Emily beamed, shifting in her seat with excitement. "Yes, why wait until we can get things fully circular? We can do so much better within a few years, and we can set up a recycling program for all old consoles." Johnny nodded in approval. "Yes, that's exactly the type of program I want you to work on as soon as possible." Leah sucked in her lips to keep herself from squeaking in excitement. This sounded like Emily and Johnny had come to some sort of deal, right? "Great," Emily said, seeming way calmer than Leah. "Would you be hiring me, or would I join the team as a freelancer?" Finishing the last of her coffee, Johnny shook her head. "You really think I'd let you run around as a freelancer with all of those brilliant ideas?" she said, chuckling after putting down the empty cup. Emily laughed. "I can sign an exclusivity contract for those ideas." "No," Johnny replied. "I want you to be part of this family." She stretched out her hand. "Welcome on board, Emily. I accept your proposal fully." Grinning, Emily shook Johnny's hand. "Thank you. I can't wait to get started." Johnny turned to Leah and offered her hand again. "You too, Leah. Welcome to the Full Circle family." Feeling a little overwhelmed, but in a joyous way, Leah accepted Johnny's firm handshake. "Thanks," she said, her eyes going back and forth between Emily and Johnny. "All right, I have another meeting again, I'm afraid," Johnny said, pushing herself up. "Alexis will send over your contract later today, with the changes you suggested." "Fantastic," Emily said. "I'll start looking for a location near my home next week." "Perfect," Johnny said. "Let's talk more about that on Monday." She smiled at Leah. "It was very nice to meet you, Leah. I hope we will get to know each other a bit more in the near future." Leah nodded excitedly. "I'd love that." And she meant it. She now fully understood why Emily was eager to work with Johnny. Just being around her made you feel inspired. "Whoa, this was a wonderful start of the day," Aisha said, smiling broadly. She waved at both of them, her bracelets clattering. "All right, better get going." "Oh my God," Leah gasped as soon as Johnny was out of earshot. "What did you do?" Emily's grin was the widest Leah had ever seen. "I sent her a bold proposal," she explained, leaning back in her chair. "I sent a budget and plan for the coming 5 years." She shrugged happily. "I guess she liked it." "But how did you change your mind?" Leah asked. "Didn't she want you to work from here?" Wiggling her eyebrows, Emily continued. "I suggested building several labs throughout the US so we can attract local talent everywhere and keep our travel footprint low." Leah's mouth dropped in amused shock. "That," she giggled, "is super smart." "Hey," Emily replied, poking Leah in the side. "Don't be so surprised. I am super smart, you know." Laughing giddily, Leah grabbed Emily's hand and pulled it to her lips. "I'm so proud of you," she said. She kissed Emily's fingers tenderly. Emily shifted to the edge of her seat and cupped Emily's cheeks. "And I love you so much," she whispered against Leah's lips. "I could have never done this without you and your family." Leah closed her eyes and pressed her lips against Emily's, letting out a happy sigh. She felt like everything had changed for the better over the course of just a few hours. She had no idea how that was even possible, but she was beyond grateful. The treasure is never on some faraway planet, Leah thought, remembering the movie with the space explorer they had watched in the park. It really is right under your nose. It's in your heart. This was More Than Fun and Games, a short blogger story sequel. Well, time sure flew by. It feels really short. As always, I want to express my profound gratitude from the bottom of my heart for everyone who helped me to make this story possible. Thanks to your financial support and non-monetary support, I was able to write, record, produce, and release this episode freely to everyone around the globe. And that is so important to me, the freely available part. And I couldn't do it without you. So I'm repeating myself, but I really mean it. I'm so grateful. Thank you. I am taking a short break now to start working on the next story, codename Project Ghent, finally. I will be back on November 21st with the first episode of Project Ghent. That's a working title, of course. I will announce the real title and artwork in the coming weeks. So if you want to stay up to date, check the blog, go to lesbianromantic.com and click behind the scenes to see the latest news, or join the community and get daily updates, pretty much. That's free too, so maybe I'll see you there. Thank you so much for spending your time with me and listening to this story. Oh, and stay safe. And if you are in the USA, you know what to do. Vote. God, we've got a puppy. I haven't shared this on the podcast feed yet, but about 8 weeks ago, we got a puppy. His name is Poof, as in the sound, not as in the, Yeah. So Poof is a Pomeranian with a little bit of Chihuahua. So he's a feisty dog. It's been a busy time, but yeah, he keeps yapping every time I start to record. So we're still working on that. But yeah, where was I? Thank you so much for listening, and I will be back on November 21st, and I look forward to seeing you then. Bye. Oh, Poof.